This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.
When have you felt the most jealous in your life? I remember a few years ago, I was in my early 20s and I had a friend who it felt like everything I wanted in life was happening, but to her. So at the time, I had this whole idea that, I would go to college, I'd meet the love of my life in college, we'd get married, I'd graduate with my dream job, and, I'd pop out a kid or two, everything would go perfectly, my career would soar to higher and higher heights every year, and by the time I was 30, my husband and I, because of course he would be great and he would be smart and have a great job and be hot and all of that. By the time we were 30, we'd be like millionaires with our kids and like taking over the world, right? And that's not at all how things worked out for me. But, to make matters worse, it felt like that dream was happening to a friend of mine, right? This friend, set out to go to college to get her MRS, and she succeeded. So by the time we graduated, she was engaged when we graduated, got married shortly after, ended up having a few kids. I want to say she had 3. We've lost touch over the past couple of years, but I want to say she ended up having 3 kids. And she also got this really amazing job right out of college. Meanwhile, when we graduated, the economy was terrible. And I graduated with a journalism degree, which even in the best of times, journalism, especially TV journalism, is a pretty competitive field. So I was hosed. I ended up being a nanny for a year, actually, before I finally got my first job in TV. But I say all this because I was so jealous of her and so upset and frustrated over what I felt should have been my life. And, looking back on it, first of all, I know this sounds cheesy and cliche to say, but like it turned out to be a blessing, because if I had married the man that I was with at that time, we most definitely would have divorced, right? And yes, it took me a little while to figure out exactly what it was that I wanted out of life. But now I have so much clarity and I'm seeing myself get there every day. And it's a really exciting process, in a process that I don't take for granted as I see all these new blessings come into my life. And as I see, like, not only that, but as I see that I'm getting the things that make me happy and satisfy me as the woman I am today. Whereas I think if I'd gotten a lot of the things that I wanted back then, I would not, as I ended up growing and maturing and learning some things about myself and what I needed to heal, I don't think that I would appreciate those things now. I know I wouldn't appreciate those things now. And if I'd gotten them back then, I know I wouldn't be as happy with my life and satisfied with my life as I am now. Because, like most people fresh out of college, my vision for an ideal life was based on what I saw in media, what I saw, on TV and on the internet at the time, not necessarily what I needed knowing and understanding who I was as a person, right? And I'm telling you this story because in the past 24 hours, so much has come up about jealousy and me meeting with my own coach and me meeting with my clients. And I wanted to share with you what it is that I know now that I wish I had known back then. So, welcome to Confidently Cherished. My name is Keisha Rice, and I am a dating coach and hypnotherapist for ambitious women who understand that relationships, particularly romantic relationships, aren't just about the fairy tale romance for the Instagram pictures, but who really understand that healthy relationships are about healing generational trauma. They're about partnering together so that you and that person can both serve your purpose and live fully. And understanding that also relationships are a tool for us to learn great things about ourselves and really understand who we are and what it is that we need. And like I said, this whole idea of jealousy and what it means has come up recently, which is why I'm recording this episode. And I'm going to do my best to keep it a short episode because I like you to just kind of give a quick listen and then think about it in your own life. And it's funny to me because this episode is going to be airing late. My podcast typically comes out on Wednesdays, and this week I had absolutely nothing to say to you. I tried to record an episode 4 or 5 other times, and every other thing that I recorded, I saved those recordings, so maybe I will go back and try to expound on those topics and make them work out. But every time I tried to record something, I just could not. It just didn't feel right until this conversation came up, because I realized that this topic has been something that has been consistently triggering for me. And it is something that I am really, even though I've coached other people through it, for me personally, it is something that I am just now really feeling comfortable with this idea. And I feel like if this is something that I have struggled with, then I know a lot of other people are as well. So this whole idea of jealousy, I say to my clients often that jealousy is not a negative emotion, and that honestly, there's no such thing as a negative emotion. People want to talk about certain emotions, love, happiness, joy, gratitude as being positive, and other ones, regret, frustration, anger, jealousy as being negative. And at the end of the day, all emotions simply inform us, right? They give us some insight into what we want, what we need. They help us identify things that trigger us, areas in which we need to do more healing, but they're not negative or positive. They're just data. They're information. And, in having this discussion about jealousy, so it first came up in a group coaching program that I'm part of. And then again, it came up with some clients of mine. And I see there's so much shame around jealousy that shouldn't be there, right? Because again, it's meant to inform us. And when I was much younger, I would get jealous over situations and I would just stew, right? Like I would get so mad at people. I would get frustrated. I would get angry. I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up going to church. So I would get jealous of other people, and then I'd get on my knees and pray to God, why me? Why doesn't God love me as much? Why can't I have this thing? It's not fair. I'm quote unquote a good girl and I'm not getting the things that I want. Why is this person who's not as good as me getting the things that they want? It's just not fair. And I remember having my quarter life crisis. And if you've never heard this story before, I've said it plenty of times. So I don't want to repeat the whole thing, but to give you a quick summary, I was in my mid-20s. I broke down, basically, while planning a friend's bridal shower. Ended up crying, being upset because, again, someone had the life that I wanted. They were getting the things that I wanted, and I wasn't getting those things. And it sent me, that whole breaking down and crying fit sent me on this whole path to become the woman that you're listening to now, because it's what started me on my self-development journey. So the reading the books, the listening to the podcasts, seeing a coach, getting my life, changing jobs, moving to a new city, meeting my husband, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I'm telling you this because this is what jealousy does for a person, right? So when I went through that whole process of just being so upset and just feeling like there were all these things that I wanted in life and I was seeing other people get them, but not me. I had a conversation with God about it, and the response I got back was, one, seeing these things in other people's lives was an indication that it was possible. So it wasn't the move to get jealous. What I needed to do was get excited, because I was seeing this happening for women like me, women that I knew. These were my friends, so we had things in common. And seeing it so close to my orbit should have been my sign that these things were getting ever closer and closer to me. And they did. But also, I remember distinctly hearing a voice telling me to celebrate these people in my life. And it was so hard for me, but I did that, So other women in my life were finding the partners, getting married, having the babies, getting the promotions at work. At the time I was very, very unhappy with my job. So these women were getting the promotions or having the health victories, right? Like losing the weight and all of that stuff. And every time someone in my life was having a big accomplishment, I followed that voice and I celebrated them. I took them out to lunch or to dinner, or help plan the parties honoring their events. And it was hard at times. I definitely remember one friend in particular taking her out to lunch to celebrate some accomplishment that she had, which is funny. I remember the memory. I don't remember what the accomplished thing was for her, but I definitely remember taking her out, celebrating, telling her I was so happy for her. Just all of that, just going on and on about how great she was and how amazing she was and how things were looking up so much in her life. And then I remember going home and just bawling and crying myself to sleep and being so upset. But again, remembering that voice telling me to celebrate. And the thing that I understand now about jealousy on this side of my journey that I did not understand on that side is that I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase success leaves clues. And people talk about it as a way of when there's something that you want in life, you should follow the paths of people who have accomplished that thing. So, there is, when it comes to coaching, right? So life coaching, business coaching, relationship coaching, nutrition and health. So nutritionists, personal trainers. Yes, there is great benefit to being coached by someone. This is why I became a coach myself, right? I understand that you want to have someone, counsel you, guide you, give you the advice, also have a method and a plan for you, and for them to also hold you accountable. At the same time, there's also just a lot of benefit in observing this person and what they do, how they speak, how they live, learning from their example. This is one of the other benefits of a coach, is that yes, you can see coaches on social media and kind of get a glimpse into their lives, and learn based on what you hear them talk about and what they say they do. But, one of the benefits of particularly one-on-one coaching is that you get a deeper glimpse into your coach's life, and not in a nosy, stalkerish way, but by regularly interacting with them, you kind of learn about their mindset, how they think, and not that you want to become them, but you do learn some of the mindsets and attitudes that you need to pick up in order to have the same success. And again, the thing that I did not understand about jealousy then was, this is one of the ways in which success leaves clues. That when I felt jealousy towards someone else, and even, I don't feel jealousy towards other people now as much as I used to. That comes from having done a lot of personal development work, because one, I am much closer now to the life that I want to have, than I was back then. I can think of only, one or two things that I still really want to accomplish, where I could feel like, I was going to say where I could feel like I've made it. And I don't think that's ever a thing. I think you're always growing and developing. But when I write down my vision for the future, like I have a vision board. And when I look at the last vision board I made and what I want to accomplish in this season of my life, my chapter of my life, I'm very close to it. So for that reason, I don't get as jealous. But also, you learn more about like what a content and happy life means to you. And you start to realize that a lot of the things that you're jealous about are things that you think you're supposed to want. And not all of that is necessarily true, right? The more you learn yourself, you learn about what it is that you really want and need. And you're not as affected by what you see on social media or on TV or any other media form. But at the same time, you also learn that, again, jealousy is nothing more than a teacher. So now, whenever I do have that feeling of, oh, this person has something that I don't have and I'm feeling a little jealous, that feeling that I would call jealousy doesn't last very long. Because as soon as I feel it, I'm like, oh, okay, like I thought that I was satisfied with my life right now, or I thought I had a pretty clear idea of what it was that I wanted, but this feeling is hinting to me that there's something else that is missing. There's something else that I need to do or have or feel to really create that life that I want. And what is it about them that I am particularly jealous of? What is the thing that I feel is missing? And that is one thing I would encourage you to do, is if you have any feelings of jealousy, to really interrogate those feelings, to question them, and to really delve into, to go deeper than the surface. You know, I can think the most recent example I can think of in this case is someone who is actually an acquaintance of mine. So this is someone that I personally know. I don't know her very well. Like, we're not besties, right? But I've met her in person. I've met her in person multiple times. I've had a couple of conversations with her. So we're not really close friends, but this is someone that I know. And I say this because she is also a business owner, and in the past year, her business has completely blown up, and she makes huge amounts of money. And you know, she's had all this success. She's been featured in all these different places. And I found myself feeling a little bit jealous of her. And when I started to interrogate that, why am I feeling jealous of her? What is it that she has that I want? My first thought was the outward, because she has recently posted a lot about money and how much money she makes. And I will say this, she is a business coach. And I say that that's relevant because, me as a dating coach, I'm not really going to be posting how much money I make. First of all, it's none of your business, but also it's not really relevant. If you're following me for dating and relationship advice, you really shouldn't care how much I make, right? But in her field, with what she does, that is highly relevant, because if you're following someone for business advice, like, I've said this more than once, you only should take advice from people who have the life that you want to live. So I assume that you listen to me because I'm married. I love my husband. My husband loves me. I have a healthy relationship and the type of relationship that I want after years of unhealthy relationships. I overcame a cycle of unhealthy relationships and bad patterns to create the type of love and marriage and relationship that I wanted to have. So I assume that that's why you're following me. You care about, like, how I overcame my own toxicity, how I broke free from being in unhealthy relationship patterns, how I learned to raise my standards, how to set boundaries, things like that. You shouldn't care how much money I make, right? Because it's not what I teach or talk about. But in her case, that's relevant. Because if people hire a business coach, they want to know that if they're learning from this person how to have a successful business, that this person has a successful business. So I'm saying all of that because I'm pointing out that there's a reason why she consistently posts about how much money she makes on social media. It's not her just trying to brag or be obnoxious. It is relevant to her work. That being said, that was my first thought. I was like, okay, I'm jealous of her because she makes more money than I do. And I need to work harder, do more, pull out all the stops, and get to the point where I'm making just as much money as her. And I started to, like, make plans for that, right? I started to think, okay, well, maybe I should reach out to her and get some coaching from her so that I can make what she makes. I started thinking about, okay, what are all these things that I could do to make more money? And as I started along this path, I realized that it was not fun for me. It was not fun for me. It did not feel good for me. And I put in the work to create this whole plan and then was, like, procrastinating on actually implementing this plan and putting it in place. So I went back and I was like, why am I so jealous of her? And I started writing down the things and then just kind of looking over this list that I had made until something resonated with me. And it's not about the money. Like, money is great. Well, I don't know where you're listening from, but I live in the United States, which is a very capitalistic society. And when I think about money, I kind of think of the Kanye West lyric, having money is not everything, but not having it is. Like, at a certain point, you make enough money where making more money doesn't really matter. But you kind of have to get to that point first, right? If you're dealing with poverty, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, there's just not as much freedom there. And that brings me to the point. I realized that the thing that I was jealous about wasn't her money, it was her freedom. Because I was seeing that now that in her business she had so many systems in place. She was, more organized. She was able to kind of like coast in her success. She had so much more free time to do certain things. And I'm not even talking about the the like bro marketing you see on social media where you have people who are rich or supposedly rich and they supposedly got there because of their business. And I say supposedly because there are some real ones and there are definitely some scammers out there too. But you see them like posing next to boats or expensive cars, or every influencer and their mama has taken a trip to Bali, all of that stuff. I just mean the freedom that she has at this point to just get up in the morning and take a road trip to the next town over because there's nothing on her calendar that day. And because she has gotten her schedule down to like, I believe like a 2 or 3 day work week, right?